Good morning. Hope everyone is doing all right. We're going to do some more coding today on the library management project. Going to stop the music. All right. So last time when we left off in this project, we had upgraded it to .NET Core 3 from 2 and started working on a little bit of refactor, moving the interfaces, for instance, out of the data project. For some reason they were in there into the service layer, and then also started creating some shared DTOs that we can use throughout our application, and deleted a bunch of tests, upgraded the startup.cs file to work with the current version of the framework, and as well the program.cs file. Got rid of all the tests. We'll have to rewrite those tests. Didn't really do anything in the presentation later yet, but maybe that's something that we can get to in this live stream. And anything else really? Confirm that the app works, ran Postgres in a Docker container. And I should have the Postgres, the Docker Compose for that in the project directory. So let's just head over there. Let's see, I'll make my terminal window a little bit more readable. And what have I even done here? Okay, it's just some cache file. All right, so let's continue on. Maybe I'll try to be a little bit more focused this time and make more progress, so we can kind of see things come together. The other thing that I think I can do here is I'll start a tmux session here and run .NET Watch. And the project is, I believe, is there a CS proj in here? Oh, library.web. CS library.web.cs proj. Gonna find an MS build project. That's interesting. I wonder what is up with the CS proj. This isn't critical. I could just go into the web project and run .NET build. Oh, probably should make sure that the database is running as well. So I'll do that up here. All right, so here we will, let's see, still waking up this morning. So we have this Docker Compose file, and I'm just running the Postgres dev database here, and I'm just going to open this up in its own pane. So if we run docker ps, I think will show us nothing is running, so we'll just do docker compose up, and now our Postgres database should be running. Already in use by container, blah 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 blah. Docker container ls. Container is already in use by container. I don't see any containers. So what if I just run docker compose down, kill everything, and then docker compose up. Docker image ls. There's going to be a lot of images on my machine right now. So maybe, how can we take care of this? If I don't see the Docker container, well, maybe I can do this. If we do docker compose up, look at the error, and say that it's already in use by this container, and then we run docker, I think it's just docker container stop, and then docker container rm, and now I can run. Looks like you're trying to copy all this stuff. All right, so now I should be able to run docker compose up. I destroyed the volume, so we may have to run the migrations again. That's not really a big deal. All right, so that's running. The app is actually running, but I'm going to remind myself what we did in the make file here as well. Do I not have a makefile? I thought we created one of these as well. Maybe it's in the data project. It's not. Maybe it's in the web project. Maybe I didn't create a makefile for this. I thought maybe in the last live stream we created a makefile. If not, that is something that we can definitely do. In fact, I have another project with a makefile. I'm surprised that I didn't create one, to be honest. Well, for now I'll just run the .NET EF command, which is startup project, library web, database. What is it? What is the EF command to run the migration? I think it's just database update. So if we run this from within the data project, .NET EF, startup project, library web, database update. Maybe I have to run this within the other directory. We'll get going here soon. Sorry about the slight delay. We'll run into library.data. I'll run .NET EF. Oof, my terminal is not liking anything this morning. .NET EF. Actually, I think I just ran the migrations command, which is not that big of a deal. .NET EF. Startup project. Library.web. Database update. The reason I like creating a makefile is for this exact reason. When there are relatively long CLI commands that are just kind of a hassle to remember, and you run them all the time, like database migrations or updating the database, then it's a nice little wrapper around that type of workflow. Okay, all these DLLs, which I shouldn't even be tracking in version control, but we'll take care of that a bit later. And now we can start the project up again and make sure that it's running. So if I go into library.web, wonder if I run .NET Watch again, if it will still say that it can't find an MS Build project. Surprised, because we're doing .NET Core, so fix the build errors and run again. What are our build errors? There are no build errors. .NET Watch, run the library web project. Oh, we're in library.web. Once I have enough caffeine in my system, we will really take off. Okay, so Watch is started. I think we configured the startup file, or rather the program file in the web project, to run on port 8000 and 8001, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, so that's good. Let me change the font size here so that it's a lot easier to read. We'll do this. Go into editor and font and bump this up. Okay. All right, so now if we head over to, I'll just open a new Chrome window here, but if we head over to localhost 8000, our MVC project should be running. And it is. All right, so cool. Now we can get back to the legacy code refactor. We have a handful of different views here. Cannot guarantee that they're all wired up correctly after our initial sort of slash and burn approach to the upgrade, but it's looking pretty good. So I'm going to come into our controllers, take a look at where we left off here. So So the other thing I'm doing is just kind of updating formatting. So the structure I'd like to have is, in general throughout this project, maybe I'll draw this really quickly as well. That would be potentially useful. What can we use to draw? Draw online. Sketchpad.io. I don't want to have to sign up for anything. I just want to draw something really quickly. All right, so previously, let's see here. Calligraphy, does this work? All right, so previously, I'm not sure what we had exactly previously, but we're building a monolith here. And we have the presentation layer up here. And this is Razor at the moment. This lives in our web project. Here we have our controllers, which are just plain old ASP MVC. Well, ASP.NET. I should say .NET Core MVC. And then down here we have the service layer, also .NET Core. These two projects here, I wonder if we can get a different color going. This is a pretty slick app, I should say, as well. All right, so up here, that's too similar. Up here, this is our web project. If I can use it correctly. All right, so fine, that's good. Down here we have our service layer, which is library.services. Down here we have library.data, the far back end of the stack. And here we have our data access layer, which is .NET Core with EF as our ORM. All right, and the way that I wanted to separate this out, I'm not so sure that the original project was like this. Before we had a dependency from the web layer on the data layer, because I was using the same models, the entity models that map to our database, which we're sort of running out of space here. Before we also were using Microsoft SQL, and now we're using Postgres to be completely cross-platform with the project. This is talking to a Postgres database, and this is sitting inside of a nice Docker container. And we're using Docker Compose to orchestrate that. Wow. See if I can just type it here. Docker Compose to orchestrate that. Docker Compose with 3 Ps. Okay, and then in terms of what's talking to what here, I wish we had a nicer pen tool as well. Just a regular old pen. All right, so we got Postgres talking to our data access layer. I want the service layer, doesn't really have much of a responsibility except to talk to the data access layer, kind of tell it what to do in terms of retrieving models, just basic CRUD operations. It could contain other business logic. This would be where it would live, so things like sending emails. We could do our authentication stuff in here. Really anything related to the business logic of our application lives here. And then our controllers invoke the service layer. Now there's also a common pattern that we could contemplate implementing here, which is to create a repository pattern, not here, but in the data access layer, like a generic repository, since we're doing basically the same simple types of operations on our data. Now, EF Core itself sort of implements the repository pattern unit of work, but I guess you still kind of lose some of the benefit of having control over your own repository pattern. So a lot of people actually wrap what EF Core does in a sort of generic repository that you can use. That would allow you to easily swap out the ORM for something besides Entity Framework, for instance. Just something to consider. So there are people who have different opinions about this. Actually, if you guys watch videos about .NET, I think there's an old video by Mosh on YouTube that does a pretty good job summarizing why you might want to implement your own repository layer. Does a pretty good job summarizing that, but we probably won't do that in this project, so I will get rid of this. We'll just have our simple data access layer communicating with our service layer, and then the presentation layer obviously talks to our controllers. The reason we're keeping this all, the presentation layer and the controllers, in one project here is we're doing full stack .NET with Razor. It might be cool to eventually wire this up to use Blazor, maybe either WebAssembly or server side, but we're using Razor here, and we have .NET MVC, which can take care of the models, views, and controllers and everything. We could put the models here, but what I'm proposing for the current update to the project is that we also just have this library.models. Class library, and this will be a global library that we use for DTOs. So if I can get back to wow, this app is pretty cool. All right, so and this is where our DTOs live. So I'll just say DTOs. I think there was a question last time about why we might use DTOs. And the short answer I would say there is that we want a representation of our models, I think, particularly for the way that our service interacts with our service layer interacts with our presentation layer or our web layer here. Not just the presentation layer, but the actual HTTP stuff as well. That is decoupled from the way that our entities are mapped to relations in the database. And so one way to do that is to create shared global models that are just simple POCOs. They're sort of just, well, they're data transfer objects. They contain no logic on their own. They're just containers that have no other responsibility. And therefore, if needed at any point, we can essentially just change, for instance, how they might be mapped to the way the data is represented in the data layer without affecting how it's consumed at levels higher up. So if I'm sending a request, I want to be able to send a request with the shape of some global representation of the DTO and not depend on mapping that immediately in the web layer to the way that it's represented as an entity model, which is really just concerned with the way that I'm storing this data in the database. So I want to limit as much as possible the knowledge that the web layer here has with how the data is really persisted, because it's just a completely separate responsibility. So that's the high level. We're introducing this new global library models. This could just simply be used by all of the other layers that need it. So for instance, our presentation layer could make use of it. Let's get back to the pen. Presentation layer could make use of it. And this is just kind of a judgment call, and you could very well not use these as the view models, if you will. I could just use view models here and have the service layer be able to speak in view models, but I don't typically like that either, because, yeah, you want to talk about entities, I think, in slightly different ways in different contexts sometimes. But without belaboring the point, this will be the structure for the time being. We have our 4 projects, Docker Compose, running that Postgres database for development. And we could also containerize the assembly, the .NET assembly itself as well. Maybe something we can do. Moises says, are you going to implement security? Let's see. Am I going to implement security, authentication, and authorization? I would like to do that, yes. The first step is going to be getting the project up to date with the new design here and taking care of some of that technical debt. And then I'll take a look at authentication authorization. I think that would be an excellent next step. All right, so now that we have a basic idea of the sort of roadmap of how it's structured, our library management system monolith, I'm going to go ahead and work on implementing it. We'll keep the app open as well. The other thing I think I remember is I didn't include the images with the repo. So we can work on that as well. Hope you guys are doing all right this morning. Hope you had a good week. All right, so let's take a look in our service layer at our book service. So yeah, so I mentioned the repository pattern. I'm putting DB context directly in the service layer, which is Entity Framework Core. And if I really wanted to separate concerns here, we could use our own generic repository here that accepts some type that we're working with. But in this case, we'll just work with DB context directly within the service layer and not overcomplicate things yet. But it's not particularly difficult to implement the generic repository pattern if it feels like we should go that way. Oh, the other thing I was doing is making methods async. And I think there was a question about that. That is something that I'm going to do. We just need to make sure that we go async all the way down and all the way back up. So our controller methods need to be asynchronous when they're calling async service calls, and our service calls need to be async when they're making calls to the data access layer. And generally for I/O, stuff like messages over HTTP or to a database call, it's just potentially a good idea to get a little bit more performance potentially out of the system, just as long as, again, we're careful to make sure that it's async all the way down so that we're not just using async methods and then blocking anyway. All right, so it looks like I left off here with this async task, service result, book DTO. I wonder if I turn on some music very, very quietly. You guys have to let me know, first of all, if the audio is good, and then also if you hear music and it's too loud. I don't want to really blast music on the live stream, but it would help me potentially focus. Hey, Fissy. Thanks for watching. Can you guys hear music? And if you can, is it too loud? Just holler if it's too loud or whatever, and I'll fix it. All right, so we are going to be getting first array fault async, the first book that matches the ID of our get method, and then serialize this into a book DTO. So if we look back at our diagram really quickly, we want our service layer here to be talking DTO language to our web layer. We don't want to pass up anything that relies on data access layer to our web layer. So that's the motivation. Wonder why It cannot, oh, we're returning a service result. That's another thing we did here is we created this generic service result so that our service, I forgot to mention that as well. We don't need to put that in the diagram, but our service layer specifically has a uniform interface for the way that it speaks to anything else that makes a request of it, which is to have a service result. And in that way, we can just wrap whatever information the service is concerned with in this data property, as well as if there's an error, we can throw an error on it. But we never get back now just some arbitrary shape from the service layer depending on the context. We always get a service result back, so I like that. So data is a new book DTO. Also, I started a Discord channel or Discord server this week. So if you guys ever are feeling like something doesn't make sense in a video you're watching, or you have requests for other types of coding that we can work on together, then I'd recommend posting it there. I'll probably see that a little bit easier than navigating comments in YouTube, but feel free to do whatever. So we'll need to serialize the author as well. What did I do for the author on the DTO here? I just said string. But what does the original book look like? Let's go to our book service. Or sorry, our book, oh, that's right. We're just dealing directly with the entity here. So let's go into models, book. Oh, I do have a string author, so I didn't have an object for author. That's kind of funny. All right. And as I'm doing this, now I'm reminded that we also added Automapper. So I don't want to have to do this myself all the time. I'd rather have a mapper object. So here we're going to say private read-only IMapper. Here we'll bring in Automapper. This is going to make our lives a lot easier when it comes to mapping DTOs, or rather mapping data from data type to a DTO. Sorry, Moses, I didn't mean to leave your message up on the channel for so long. All right, so mapper, and then mapper. So we need to inject this. If we head into startup.cs, are we injecting our mapper? No, not yet. So it is kind of cool that we can use dependency injection to inject instances of our Automapper wherever we need them. And my computer's telling me the .NET crashed. That happens more than it used to. I don't know if it's my system or if it's something else, but it's not the end of the world. All right, so if we find Automapper, we don't have that yet, but let's head up to configure services. I did set up npg SQL, yeah, okay, cool. So here we can also say services.add Automapper. And for this, I need to actually add Automapper to our web project. And I think there's a Automapper dependency injection project. So for this, we're going to say Automapper.dependency injection. I'm going to go ahead and add this to our web project. Now I'll be able to inject an instance of Automapper wherever we need it in our dependency graph. So we'll say add Automapper. And there are some settings that we need to set up here. We actually need to create a mapping profile. That is really straightforward, so we'll do that now, but I think here we do like C add profile, and this is a type. Here we will just say entity mapping profile. This would be something that we need to actually create, and then we say type of startup here for this class. All right, so let's create our mapping. So I will probably keep this mapping. We could put it in the DTO layer. It's just a simple Automapper mapping file. Maybe I'll put it in the web layer for now, but does that make sense to put it in the web layer? We're using it everywhere. It kind of makes sense to make it a global mapping. Still waking up. All right, so let's add a directory here called mapping. Could also call it serialization or something like that, but we're going to create a class entity mapping profile. That's this one here. So we have our public class entity mapping profile. We need this to extend profile, which is a Automapper thing. So let's make sure that our models class has Automapper. So we'll go ahead and add Automapper here. And now this part is going to be really simple. This class just has a constructor. So we'll have a public entity mapping profile. And then in our constructor, all we need to do is call create map for all of the mappings that we want Automapper to handle. So I can say create map, and then for instance, from book to book DTO. And then if we wanted to automatically be able to reverse that relationship as well, we can just call reverse map here rather than creating two separate lines, which is kind of nice. All right, so I'm going to say that this is the Automapper mapping profile for serializing entity models to and from DTOs. So I can say d/serializing entity models to DTOs. Guy Incognito says, I haven't been this excited to watch something on a Saturday morning since watching cartoons as a kid. Well, I'm psyched about that. I appreciate that. Yeah, I kind of miss watching cartoons on Saturday mornings now that you mention it. But I'm flattered. I wouldn't go so far as to say that this is as fun as that, but... All right, so now we got entity mapping profile file created. We can wire it up with our dependency injection framework. All right, sweet. So we'll have to map all of the other entities and DTOs that we have, but I haven't created many of them yet. I'm gonna create a namespace for our DTOs now, though, that we have a mapping namespace. So we'll call this DTOs. We'll bring these into here. Technically, a pagination result is a type of DTO, but I don't know. We'll keep it at the root namespace, and we'll update all the namespaces in the entire solution. And I'm gonna make a quick commit here. Didn't I have tmux open? Did tmux crash? Also, sneak peek, next series, building a series called Stacked, where we use different front ends, different back ends, and they're all cross-compatible, so that you can build stuff, and then if you want to learn another thing, you can swap it out for another framework. That should be a lot of fun, just a lot of work. So, git status. Wow. All right, git add, git commit. Add Automapper is the most important thing that we did here. Hopefully I get far enough along in this morning's live stream or this afternoon, wherever you are this evening, to actually merge this, make a PR and merge this into the master branch of the library management project. That's the goal. What's up with this? It has virtual members but no inheritors. That's okay. All right, so now when we come back to our book service, I don't actually need to go through serializing to a DTO like this. Now it's going to be much easier because what we can say is var book DTO is equal to mapper.map to book DTO. And we just pass it that book. And what's cool about this is if I've hooked it up correctly, that what we get out now is a type book DTO, and it basically does all the serialization, all the properties that it finds matches for. So much cleaner, easier to read code. You do have to be careful and mindful that you create your mapping correctly, but generally Automapper is really pretty solid. So we can say data.bookDTO and error is just going to be explicitly null here. And I could wrap this in a try catch as well. So like for instance, let's say that our service result, first or default async is going to return either that object or null. And if it returns null, depending on how, well, yeah, we don't have a separate repository layer here, but so if it returns null, that means it didn't find anything in the database. So we might return a 404 in that case if we're being like strictly RESTful about it, if this was a REST API. Seeing as this isn't a REST API, and that we're just kind of wiring this up, hardwiring it up, if you will, to a single presentation layer, then 404 might not make sense here. I mean, certainly we control the presentation layer. So if we say we don't find an entity in the database, then I can just handle that in the presentation layer. I don't need to send some type of serialized object from the HTTP response that any front end can handle, if you will. So these HTTP code kind of stuff isn't super critical here. 404 in our case would be like the page wasn't found or something. So just an interesting distinction here between maybe building traditional REST API versus building this monolith where we have a fairly tightly coupled situation between service layer and presentation layer. We're just feeding it directly to a Razor view. All right, so nonetheless, if we don't find it here, we could send a service result back to the controller to say that it wasn't found. And we could create an error response. I don't want to get too far ahead of myself on this one method at this point. I would like to get everything else up to date though. But we could do this at the very least. Feels kind of fun to go back to an old project. All right, also bad practice here. Catching broad exceptions, should catch specific exceptions, but we will do that once we get everything up to speed here. Here maybe we'll say data is null, and the error is a new service error. And here we'll say the message is just the e.message. And I think I put stack trace on here as well. Some interesting design questions here. Since service result is a generic type, or generic takes it it's a generic class, and just takes any type here at the moment, we might consider whether or not we do something like, rather than make it have this service error property, we could just, when we need to, pass service error type here, and then have like a bool has error or something like that. So I'm thinking we could do like this. If I can type this morning. And then when I need to pass a service error, I could do this. Actually, that's not going to work unless I bubble the generic thing all the way up. So forget what I said. kind of fun to think out loud here. Baylor says, if the book is null, does Automapper just proxy the null object through, or will it raise an exception? That's an excellent question. I believe that it will raise an exception. Let's see. So if the book is null, I wonder what the default behavior is for this method, and if it's given to us here. Let's see. Oops. I want to see this one really quickly. You at least get a blank object in return. Looks like you can configure it with this configuration, allow null destination values, maybe? How old is this post? This is pretty old, but I wonder if it's the same. Wow. Automapper is very configurable. You can also supply an alternate value for destination member if the source value is null anywhere along the member chain. So that's interesting. I could also give this a shot. Let's see what happens if, where are we, book service. What is the XUnit test class? My navigation skills are weak this morning. Test fixture, is that really what it is? No, that's NUnit. MS test. XUnit, you don't even have an attribute. Okay. But for a test, you say fact. Poor XUnit coming along at the after we have all these mature test frameworks and running out of unique words to use. All right, so fact, we could say test book service get test get given null book returns I guess we're going to assert that it returns a service result with a null data. And then I'm going to add XUnit to our test project. Now we can bring this in. And so how are we going to do this? We're going to say the system under test is a new book service. And the book service currently has a dependency on the DB context and Automapper. So I guess we'll just mock those out really quickly. I think I'll just use mock-q for this. So how will we write this? We'd say mock db context is equal to mock, and we need to bring in moq. I wish I knew how to say this. How do you guys say mock? Mock-q or moq or mock? I would like to say mock, but then it's just totally ambiguous when we're talking. Is there an db context? I forget how to mock db context. Mock db context.object, I think. And then the library db context is what I need, and then the imapper, our mock mapper. Alright, so I suspect that argument type db context is not assignable to library db context. I'm also going to bring in fluent assertions here. Oh, I've recently used fluent validation. I wonder if anyone else has used fluent validation here. It's really nice for validating input in APIs, like typical REST APIs. All right, what's fact upset about? Oh, well, I can't just say test given, can I? All right. And then we want to set up our mock db context when we call get to return a null object. So I think we can say mock, if I can remember how to do this, mock db context.setup. Isn't it setup? Time to check the docs. Hey, Anten, hope I'm saying that correctly. Mock.setup, oh, I can't obviously mock the resolved object, which now I remember why I do that in the actual method calls, even though I think it looks pretty gross. What background am I using for IDE? I think I'm using Night Owl, if I'm not mistaken. I'll look it up for you. Appearance, I believe. Gradiento Deep Ocean. Gradiento. Night Owl is another good one. I won't switch it up or else I'll lose the flow. But all right, so setup, and then it looks like we call some method. I think we have to say like it takes or something like that. It is any. Let's see, blah, 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 blah. db dot, how do we call this? Setup m does something dot returns true. What did I mess up here? I'm just not mocking this correctly. Hold on. Why do I have checkout service open as well? Let's open up the class that we are fake TDDing. Let's see, add get. So I'm calling context.books.first or default async returns. Can I do like this? Books.get. Why is it upset here? How do I add that? Unsen, you're talking about the theme I'm using? I think with Rider and like any other IntelliJ editor or IDEA, you can go into somewhere there's like an extensions that you can install. So, try to see if I can find that for you. Not sure. Tools, file. It's been a long time since I guess, installed extensions. But it's just an extension that you would install from from Rider. All right, so what am I not mocking correctly here? Async DB, await db.book, stack get first or default. This is this DB set of books, so it should have, what do I have on books? What is it? Oh, I think it's first or default async. I just had the method name wrong. All right, so returns. Now what did I get wrong here? Returns true. Is there a helper for that or something? Candidates. Oh, this should return, like, can we, am I doing something incorrectly here? So I want to set up this, I want to basically patch this call so that it returns null. How am I using it in the book service? First default, blah, blah, blah. Oh, I think I have to say like it is any number or something like that. Yeah. First or default async. Do I have to say like it is any expression? I don't think that it's that complicated. I'm gonna look up mock first or default async. I do not want to write my own testable at this point. How to mock async repository. Mock set is equal to new mock of db set book. Oh yeah, I could just mock the db set for sure. Yeah, something like this guy a little bit. Although this is the dbset interface. Setup x.expression returns data.expression. Mock as iQueryable foo setup returns. What's data here? Oh, I see data in this case is just this guy's array of foos as queryable. Mock as iQueryable foo setup xx.expression. All right. Yeah, if we did like a db set of books, like Guy is suggesting I've done previously, Also, I apologize if it's, yeah, if I'm saying anyone's name incorrectly. So I guess in French that would be Guy, but if you're a guy or Guy, thank you. All right, so then what I was doing here was like, probably like this. X.id int. I wonder if I can put like it is any number here. If that's the case, this is some wild syntax. Once we get past this, we'll have a good pattern for it. It is any. I feel like I've written unit tests with mock like this before. I wonder if I can remember how I did that exactly. Oh my gosh. I think that there is a returns async as well. So let me set this up. If I recall correctly, there's like setup. You want to set up the thing that you're setting up. Get first or default async. I still don't know about this, but let's just say, I wonder if I can just do id is equal to 1 here. Can we just directly set something up? Oh, sorry, book.id is equal to 1. What am I missing here? Oh, that's outside of the setup. And then returns async null. Why can't I pass null here? Ambiguous invocation. Goodness, book returns. If mock extensions, I returns results. Let's just mock something simple really quickly. If I did like setup. Gosh, I guess I don't know how to mock a first or default async with MOQ. Mock set as I async enumerable, setup get enumerator, returns test async enumerator. So this guy wrote some unit testing helpers. It is any string. Returns task from result string. Wonder, actually, clearly I'm just kind of like hacking at this and not completely understanding. Task, yeah. Alright, I'm going to come back to this one and figure out how it works a bit later. First of all, this is now no longer the MockDB context for the book service, but I was using the mock of the library DB context. And I'm going to come back to this one. Sorry for the lack of TDD on that one. All right. So what my hope is here is that when Automapper receives a null object here, that it's going to return a null result as data. I could probably, I guess I'm kind of stuck on this one. I could just test that behavior as well, just for a spot check. I wonder if it will, well, I'm just going to drop it for now so I can keep going in the service layer, but we'll 100% come back to that. And then we have get all, and here we want to implement pagination. So books, and here I think Automapper should just be able to map the collection of books as well. So if I say var paginated books, equals mapper dot map to a list of book DTOs. And then for this, what I did was say a page service result is a pagination result of this type. Pagination result is just a list of the type and the results. So if we come back here, our pagination result is the new pagination result of type book DTO. Pagination result comes here, and here what are the properties on pagination result? The results per page and page number. All right, we need to set up the actual pagination as well. So I will work on setting that up as well. So I would probably like to extract this out to a class, but for right now, what I can do is say, these aren't actually paginated books, these are just book models. So what I want to do is, I want to say the books here, like, here, I'm going to do this first. It's equal to books dot, here we'll order by descending. Book dot, ooh, I don't even have like a created on or anything. So really we want our service layer also to be able to order by whatever the user is wanting to order their view by, probably. So we're going to start by just ordering by regular ascending order author, but we could come back and actually make this a little bit more robust as well. And then what I want to do is skip some number and then take some number. And this will configure as well. So this is still going to get us a list of books. This will get us a page of books. And paginated books is going to be that page of books. And so now we need to actually figure out how we're going to pass in the page number and the per page for pagination. I'd kind of like to extract this out into a separate class. So we can do that momentarily. Here we'll say int page and then int per page. And here what I can say is that the ends to skip is just the page -1 times the number per page that we want to see. And then that's what we'll always skip. And then we'll always take the same number per page. Guy says, how's what you're doing in this test different than the code for the test in library test book service should as get book by ID? Will this strategy in the old test not work? Actually, let's take a look at what I did previously there. That's a good question. Sorry for the delay. And let's sign ourselves into GitHub. And look at the old tests. Set up c.books returns mock dbset object, and so here what I want to do this time is, yeah, I could probably do this. I just need to make sure that mock, the way that we set up the get by ID. Yeah, so maybe I do need to do something like this, huh? And just make sure that it returns null. Let's give that a shot. So before I did something like this, and rather than mocking the whole DB context, I said mock DB set is a new mock DB set of book, I believe. And then mock set as iQueryable book, setup, provider expression element type. Wow, this is more than I thought I previously did, because that's cool. All right, let's see. For mock context, I did mock this as well. Set up all of this to make sure that it gets returned. I don't remember this at all, but I think it's looking good. And then previously as a test, I had this queryable list of books as the test fake, or the fake data rather, the fixture, and the waves and the snow leopard. 2 good books. All right, returns books provider. Thank you, by the way, Guy, for bringing my attention back to my legacy code, which I apparently forgot about. But apparently I spent some time figuring this out previously, 3 years ago. Mock context, new library D context, and then I set up this book service mock contact.object. And then book.get should be snow leopard. So here, if I take the same strategy, And so now we have something if we just say get anything else, which isn't in our queryable, then var book.should.be null, I believe, is the intended behavior. So I had to set up provider returns the books provider, expression returns books expression. So what was I trying before? Before I was specifically trying to mock out the repository method, set up the repository method to return null, the first or default async. In this case, I am just setting up the mock DB set, everything on it basically. And now when I call, and also setting up the call to the DB context books to return the mock set object, which has been set up, and newing up the book service with the mocks, and then calling .get, which I believe is the one that we were working on. Yes. And the hope is that now, well, now it's not going to return null, but it's going to return this service result with a null book DTO. So I think we can say it should be equivalent to a new service result. Thanks again, Guy, for bringing my attention back to the original unit test, which I probably shouldn't have deleted in the first place, and spent all this time figuring out how to wire it back up. All right, so we're going to need to make sure everything is building. So first of all, I'm going to come and update our interface here for the get all, where we have an int page and int page number. And that should at least get it building. We haven't finished out the building out the get all method yet, but can definitely do that. Microsoft.NET test.sdk is not installed, so we'll install it. And then let's see if we can build the test project and see if it picks up on that new plugin. And then we have to install XUnit runner. And then probably build again. Alright, so let's try to just run. If we get an error, it may likely be an error with the way that I've written the test, so we'll just debug it if that's the case. And if we see Automapper blow up, then we know that expected member data does not have the data that the other one has. So let's see what the other one has here. Okay, we don't have very good information there, so what I'm going to do is just debug this test and see what data we're getting back. Oh, nice. Yeah, using in-memory database is also a good way to test this. Kind of like do integration, a bit of an integration test, at least, well, I guess whatever you want to call it. So here, this is interesting. We get a book with ID 1, status faulted, result not yet computed. Oh, probably because this is an async method, no? That is my guess. As far as Automapper is concerned, though, let's do the following. Page of books, paginated books, map, or sorry, wrong one. Get. What I'm going to do is put a breakpoint here, stop the test. Since we have an async method now, I think I need to like await this, by the way. And I wonder if I need to do some kind of like task dot resolve or whatever, but let's just try to see if the runner can run an async test as well. I'll debug this. Should hit the breakpoint in the method as well. Thanks for reminding me, Guy, also about the in-memory database. That's a really good idea. In general, I also try to write my own simple mocks whenever possible, like just write simple test bys that I can make assertions about them being called and that kind of thing. Okay, are we running the test or what? Apparently not. What's up with that? Will XUnit run an async test? Seems like a dangerous idea to have async tests, maybe. Yeah, see, it just says finished. It didn't hit any breakpoints. NUnit async tests. Sorry, XUnit async tests. XUnit not awaiting async test. You need XUnit 1.9 for async test to work properly. Surely I have at least that. Public void my async unit test. Oh, here, async task, my async unit test. Oh wait, XUnit does the rest of the work. So yeah, supposedly this should work. Let's come back to test project, manage NuGet packages, and look at what we have installed. Yeah, I have like a way later version of XUnit, so don't expect that to be the problem. The provider for the source side queryable doesn't implement iasync query provider, only providers that, okay, so mock set, I wonder if this works. Mock set as, is there a way to set this up? Provider for the source. Learning a lot about unit testing async methods with XUnit. So the error was the provider iasync query provider. so squirable.build mock queryable. Oh, I don't want to install a dependency for this. Okay, something else to come back to here as well, which is that I need to figure out how to set these up, and I think probably the way to go here is to use the in-memory database and forget about trying to mock all this async stuff. If I had to have a choice about it, that is probably what I'm going to do. Too bad we can't just call like .await and then make an assertion, but all right. Something for me to learn here. Actually, if I run the test now, if I debug it, we still have the async issue. I wonder if Automapper will have resolved book by the time execution gets here. And if not, I could just change this to first or default and block on it for a minute while I check the behavior of Automapper. Okay, I'm going to stop this test for right now. All right, so let's get back to how we're going to paginate these books. Yeah, thanks. Thanks for that, guy. I agree. I think I'm down a little bit of a rabbit hole, and we'll come back to this when I focus on testing explicitly, because clearly I have a bit of research I need to do about testing async with XUnit and mocking the repository async stuff in general. All right, so now we have this new way to get all. And so what I'm going to do here is see where get all is called. This is probably called from our controller, obviously. And so if we come into our controller, I think in the catalog controller, we're probably somewhere we are, yeah, library asset service. We get this listing result. Something else that Automapper can be used here for, although I have all these little helper methods to get title and get type and that kind of thing as well. Function result detail. Okay, so now if we wanted to get by a particular author, we can get all the books for the particular author. In this case, we're going to do pagination again here. Should probably create a paginator class. Where could we put this one? This is always going to be created by our service layer. So maybe we'll create a class here, paginator. Baylor, you didn't derail the stream. Looks like that package adds a .setupData method on a DB set. That is cool. I need to remember that, so when I revisit this, I will... All right, I'm going to poke my head back down the rabbit hole just to make note of what Baylor mentioned here. Baylor, are you talking about the package that we just kind of saw on GitHub? Alright, so let's have a paginator class that allows us to paginate any of our data. And so we always want to return a page of data when we do this. Public list of t get page of data, or maybe just like build page results. And so if I wanted a page of books out, what I could say is var page of books is equal to get, we could just make this a static, I think. Does it need to be async for any reason? Yeah. I could also just inject it as needed, so I think I'm going to make it an object for the time being. And then what we'll say is we'll make this extends paginator. Could obviously just new this up, but alright, so now we have an interface. And I could put this in a different file as well. Sorry about that. Alright, so let's put this in a different file in our helpers. Put this here. And then we'll implement this momentarily. But what I can do now is inject the paginator into our service layer. So I can say private read-only paginator for, in this case, well, I would like it to be any, let's just do like this for the time being. I think it's going to require a thing let's have default. So we're going to say a paginator of book DTOs. And then I need to obviously wire that up over in our startup.cs file. Just checking in on the stream. Alright, so if we head back into startups.cs so I can inject the paginator, I believe this is going to work. What we'll do is say services.add scoped paginator. think I need to say type of. Sorry, add scoped. So that I can inject any type of this, I need to say type of iPaginator. Actually, how do you do this? Man, I'm like drawing a lot of blanks this morning. I think that we can do it like this. I think that's going to let us to wire up the generic for dependency injection. So now when I need to paginate, I've got the injected paginator, and then when we need to get all, rather than build my page of books directly in the service, what I can say is var page of books is equal to paginator.build page result for those books. And this needs to be, need to take in the books and then the page and then the per page. And I need to allow this to accept any type of my DTOs, I suppose. Maybe I'm overcomplicating this, but page of books comes in. I could also have Automapper do that. I don't want to map in the paginator. The paginator should just paginate the results. So build page results. Here we have the T, I believe. And we're going to call this data. Come back to the implementation. Await. I think I need to say where T is an iQueryable maybe. And then just return this. Forget the syntax for this. Let's see here. Oh, I could say where it is a DB set, I believe. iPaginator T where why is this so complex? Build page result. T where hold on, I'm losing the thread here. Isn't there an IDB set or a library DB set? So first of all, this is a paginator where I have the DTO and then T2 of the data type. So when I say iPaginator of book DTO, I mean iPaginator of the book. So in this case, come back to the paginator where book is not assignable to book of the DB set of book. Yeah, I need to call build page result. Where T is so I want T to be the DB set type, I think, and I want can you do this? Must be a reference type in order to use it as a parameter. So it looks like I should be able to say type 1, type 2, where T class. The other idea was where T is equal to DB set of T, but I wanted T here to be the actual, oh, I see what you're saying. Okay, but here I have probably need to go back to the interface. There's that. Where is the paginator? And here, we're not going to be able to, so I need to know the, what I can say there is, I can pass an expression, I think, for the order by, and then I could just say, like, expression, I'll remember that in a second, but here, order by the expression, like the order by expression. Ooh, this is getting slightly more complicated than I wanted, but it's not bad. So the order by expression parameter can be function of t and then the order. And build page results can be t order. So that is okay. That resolves how to do this sort of dynamic order by with whatever expression we want to pass it here. And the type is, this will give us access to like book.author, whatever. I wonder what is upset about here. Interface is not implemented. Oh, well, this is the new signature that we want. So I think that now I'm not sure if I have the generics in the DB set correct, but I think that in order to have dynamic ordering on whatever type it is that we're trying to order by or paginate by, that this expression thing will work. And now the signature is going to be all messed up because I want to order here by books. How do I want to do that? Oh, I would just say book.author here. And now the only thing that's left is something's messed up with my types on the first parameter. This is saying that the DB set book is not assignable to the book's model itself. So I could just call context.t, I guess. How does that work? Like I could bake this into build page result. And then, oops, sorry, paginator. But no, I don't want that here. So this is a DB set of books, no? Yeah, this is a DB set of books. And it's telling me that my type here, where T is a DB set of T, this is why I thought I needed two types, where I have like the entity type, where T is the entity, but it says this needs to be a reference type in order to use it as a parameter. But your other suggestion, Baylor, was to say maybe where T is class. This one I didn't completely understand. Yeah, this one I didn't completely understand. Here I want to say I want to paginate given some DB set. Oh, wait. Yeah, now I feel like that this should have worked. All right, I need to think about this one. So we're saying that give me a paginated list of books where T is the DB set of books. Oh, the interface should be T class. And then the implementation you're thinking should be a DB set of T. So build page results. Still upset that Microsoft DBset was not assignable to library data models.book. This is a DBset, no? DBset has a type constraint of class, and you're trying to pass a DBset to the build page result of previously defined T. Yeah. Yeah. By the way, I'm not even awaiting anything here. I wonder if I could just... No, I don't want to enumerate the books at that point. I want to do it... in here. So the paginator is actually making the query, by the way, I guess. Yeah, this is actually making the query. Alright, so I gotta figure out this weird generic thing. T is the DB set for sure. Hey, Racket. I don't know if this C# looks really nice, but C# in general is really nice. Kind of getting stumped on a generics problem working with DB set. Do you use another language yourself? All right, so books, argument type, Microsoft DB set book is not assignable to parameter type. Why is the parameter type models.book? Probably because it is, but oh, do I need to do this? And then in the paginator class, and then here, all right, cool. It's a little bit I think it's a little bit happier here. Oh, Baylor, you said the same thing at the same time. I still don't know if this is gonna work, but now we have a very plugged into Entity Framework paginator. I wouldn't be surprised if Entity Framework probably has its own paginator. If it does, I wonder if it looks like this. Anton says, am I using a custom theme because when I added Gradiento Deep Ocean, I'm not getting the same theme. The color does not match yours. Okay, so there's a few different Gradiento themes. Maybe it's just that there's a different one. So let's see. If we go into color scheme again, general. Oh, I'm using Material Dark. I'm so sorry. I think I said Gradiento. I believe I'm using Material Dark. Gradiento looks like this. I don't know what you guys prefer. That yellow is kind of intense. So I think I was using Material Dark, Deep Ocean or something like that. These names are so dramatic. Material Dark. Anton, you're going into computer science this fall as a freshman? Congrats, man. That is awesome. I wish you the best of luck. I'm sorry that you're starting college at a time when we have all of this COVID stuff, but I hope that you enjoy your path. And I didn't do computer science in college, so I don't know what it's like, but I hope that it's a lot of fun for you. All right, so now we have this paginator class, which, yeah, wraps all of this fancy EF stuff, lets us pass an expression with a number of things, and it's async, and what more could you want from a paginator? Builds a paginated list. We could make this, we could if I was in the repository pattern, this could be an iRepository collection or something like that. All right, so we could just see how many generics we could use in one place. But thank you, Baylor. Shout out to Baylor for helping us trudge through the definition of this class, and for the magic insight that the interface here can say where T is class. All right, which is a pretty low-level construct, I think. Builds a paginated list of entities or of data. And specifically, this one is tied to EF, so this is, we're going to say EF DB set data. EF core DB set page number to query the number of entities per page, and then expression is a order by lambda. Type param is, yeah, just implicit, I guess. All right. Actually, it's like the property type to order by, but whatever. All right, so books, get the books, paginate them, and this will make the call to SQL thanks to being tightly coupled to Entity Framework inside of that paginator. And then we use Automapper to map that. Probably broke our, what else have I broken here? Startup still happy with the way that I'm getting our paginator. I think it's pretty fine with that type of iPaginator. All right, so getting to the bottom of our service class, here we're returning a page service result. Anything else on that one? Service error, we can say is null. I'll just do that explicitly. Now, if we want to get by author, again, we're doing the same pagination. And our pagination results will look, this is almost exactly the same method. It's just a helper function, I guess, in a sense, in that we have this additional where query with the author contains expression. So everything else in here is going to look the same, and so this isn't the driest code of all time, but we're going to, maybe though, I wonder if when we get something by an author or by another, do we want to give the client the option to pass in the page and the number? Or, yeah, might as well. I mean, that makes sense. I was going to suggest we could just in page and per page. And here I want to get the DB set. Oh goodness. Thanks to doing this at different levels of abstraction now, iQueryable is not a DB set. What if I change it from a DB set to an iQueryable? So where T is class, and then in our paginator, here I thought I was done with the paginator, but it is not yet behind us. This is going to be upset about the implementation on the inside of here, yeah? No, okay. This is okay, I believe. What kind of VS Code do I add for adding C# namespace? Robin Sandeep asks. I am using whatever is just sort of built into the JetBrains Rider IDE, and I think I can hit Command period to bring in the sort of like context actions, I think they call it, where you can like if something's incorrect here, like if this namespace is incorrect, it's technically just a compiler warning, I think. Like it doesn't really matter, but we can move it here, just in my case, command period. All right, so I don't want to go back down the rabbit hole of this generic thing, but because of the fact that I want to be able to use a where clause, okay, there is something that I could do here, which is create an overload for this method, which takes a where expression as well as an order by expression. I'm basically creating a little repository style helper. So we are going to come back to what worked. And I could build a page result here with a where clause as well. And the expression for this one would be expression, I like the where clause, I guess, to be first. Here I could say expression func of t and bool, and call this one the where expression, and this one the order by expression. And now we have the order expression, and that the where and the where expression here. And now I don't need to mess with the types anymore as well. I think that this will be fine, although I'm starting to feel like this is a pretty heavyweight entity paginator, but it is what it is. And now I'm even thinking, like, why create an overload when you can just create one method with a default value of null or something on the where, but no, wait, that won't work. All right, so here builds a paginator's list of default data with a where expression and link order by. Can you guys hear any type of music? My neighbor is playing pretty loud music. I don't think it's coming up. Does DB set subclass iQueryable? I thought that it was a subclass of iQueryable, but I got that reference type error when I tried to make, when I tried to say this. The type T must be a reference type in order to use it as a parameter T. For some reason, that same restriction is not the case for a DB set. Oh, I could just look quickly. I could peek at the decompiled DB set. It is well, it implements iQueryable. iQueryable itself is IEnumerable generic and just regular IEnumerable and just regular iQueryable. What does out T do in the case of a generic? On 10, my major was mechanical engineering. C# generic out type as a generic modifier. For generic type params, the out keyword specifies that the type parameter is covariant. You can use out in generic interface and delegates. Covariance enables you to use a more derived type than specified by the generic parameter. This allows for implicit conversion of classes that implements. So does this mean that if R is a type of, say, S, then I could use then I could use iQueryable S? Is it Def Leppard? No, I don't think it is. I can't exactly hear what's playing, but it's just some really loud thumping. Okay, well, this is one to improve my knowledge of C# and type systems in general that I am not prepared to learn at this very moment. But for now, we have this second overload of build page result where we are also able to provide a where expression, and we can remove this tag and we can update our documentation. The link where, okay, expression, a link order by expression, and I'll update the docs up here as well. Okay, yeah, that one's just called expression. Let's rename it where expression. Sorry, this is the order by expression. Okay, cool. So now we have two overrides. And now when I want to build a page result with this guy, I can say where book, what am I trying to do here? Get the book by author. Yeah, I'd do the same. Build page result has 4 parameters but is invoked with 5. What's the deal? Oh, I need to update the interface as well. DB set data, blah, blah, blah. What is this? Oh, it's just formatted horribly. Build page results. I was looking at this as like, that's not even valid C#. All right. And then we have another one here where we have expression. And then we have, this one is our order by expression, and this one is our where expression. And this is a bool, and then this one is order by expression, where this is the T order thing. All right, cool. So we updated the interface. Now what's it upset about here? I queryable, oh, did I not change that? Oh, right, we don't need this. And b.author dot contains the author is our where expression. Wow. Making some kind of progress. Slow and steady. Books page per page. Get the author. Order by the author. Now we map the list of books to book DTOs and return that. Otherwise, we return a page service result, and this has to be that pagination result without an error. I'm going to do the horrible thing of catching a broad exception. Catch. We're going to return data is null, error is a new service error. I know that this is not dry, but it is what we're doing, I guess. Stack trace is equal to e.stacktrace. Okay, let's make sure everything builds. Whew. So now that we have kind of some structure to the new services, we'll have to fix this build error. Yeah, because we have this new interface definition. Now that I have some structure here, I'm going to apply the same sort of patterns to the other services. Once we get done with that, I'm going to update my to-do list on this guy and then work on XUnit testing. So it's 12 o'clock here. Been going for about 2 hours, probably go for another hour and see where we get. All right, so also thank you guys for watching, whoever is watching. And thank you guys also for the pair programming. Book service does not implement interface member iBook service get by author string. So let's go see. Just as a recap for anyone who is tuning in now, this is the structure of the app that we're building. Just a monolithic .NET Core MVC app with Razor at the front end. Our HTTP stuff is just going to be handled in our controllers, which is going to talk to our service layer. Our service layer will only speak to our web layer in terms of these POCO DTO models, but it will talk to our database layer in terms of entity models. And we have Postgres running in a Docker container. All right, so let's fix this implementation of book service. So it's saying that get by author ID is not, because I changed the signature to say get by author page per page. All right. Get by author in page in per page. Get by ISBN. That's going to return. Well, this is interesting. Do different versions of the same book have the same ISBN number? And does that matter? It depends on how we're storing them in the database, I guess. This is kind of dependent on us as a library of books. I think I would want a book, if we're getting it by ISBN, just to return a single book, right? So I'm going to simplify that one and make sure that it returns like first or first of default or however that gets implemented. And clean up our namespaces in the whole solution. Come back to our book service, which should be happy after we update the signature of get by ISBN. All right, curious to know if anyone watching uses Blazor for anything, and if they do, what they think of it. Git status, git, we're gonna just build the project and make sure that we don't have any build errors. We might. Book service does not implement get by ISBN, right, because I didn't do that. Get by ISBN. We said that, yeah, I don't want this to return a page list anymore. So we're going to say books dot first or default async. And we're going to make this a single book. And we're going to return a new service result. A book DTO var book DTO is equal to mapper.map to a book DTO of book DTO. Error is null. And here we return a service result of book DTO. And this should be null and not null. Task book DTO. Oops. All right, what's it upset about here? Type service result book DTO doesn't match. Expected type book DTO. Oh, that's right. What am I doing? This needs to be a service result, just not a paginated service result. Okay, I bet we build. I hope we build. And if we do build, I will make a commit. We don't build yet because there's no argument given that corresponds to the required formal parameter book paginator of book service, library, DB context. All right, .NET, just tell me what line we're on. 56, book service test. Ah, that's right. Now we have a paginator. So let us expand our dependency graph to include a mock paginator. Paginator type book, and come down here, mock paginator dot object. This is getting a little long. All right, still need to refactor the test to actually work with asynchronous DB context stuff, but let's try to build now. Build succeeded. Git status, git add, git commit. What do we do? Quite a lot. Apparently all of these, all the namespaces got updated. That's why. Namespace update, whatever. Just say add paginator. Update namespaces. Okay, so get by author. I'm probably not catching all the exceptions I need to catch, but everything in the service layer as far as the book service goes now is asynchronous. We're returning service results everywhere. So let's go ahead and update the interfaces for the remaining services. So I checkout service. Ooh, this one's going to be kind of gnarly. What else do we have here? Hold service, iLibrary asset service, iLibrary branch service. You guys know why I chose to make such a sprawling project? I'm just kidding. This was a fun project. When I wrote it, it was honestly just as much for me to build something myself in C#, in .NET, I should say, in .NET Framework at the time, I think. Maybe it was .NET Core at first. I don't remember exactly. But if it was, whatever it was really a great learning experience. Even if some of this code is a little redundant. All right, let's tackle checkout service because it's a big one. And if we can get this one up to speed, we'll be well on our way. So we want everything to return a service result here. And why is this organized so horribly? Maybe because checkout service has too much responsibility. Let's see. Get current hold patron, get current hold placed, mark lost, mark found. Maybe I could just have a single method to mark its state, but that's fine. It is what it is. The only place where I'm returning collections here are, I like to kind of separate, rather than so much separate by behavior. For whatever reason, I feel like it's easier to read if I separate by type. I might flip-flop on that. So all of the void stuff I'm just going to put at the bottom. These are going to be tasks. And I think I remember reading somewhere someone was talking about like having separate classes for things that return collections versus, I mean, obviously that's just like it just depends on implementation and business logic in general. But okay, so this stuff will be these pagination results like we have in our iBook service, page service results, I should say. So we are going to take a similar approach. going to do page service results of checkout DTOs, which don't exist. Checkout DTOs. We're going to have our get all with page numbers. We're going to say get checkout history. Should have more descriptive parameter names here as well. That's okay. Get current holds is a page service result of a hold DTO. Task of service result of a checkout DTO will be just the get. Service result checkout get latest checkout. I can only assume that this is the user ID, so I should name it as such, but I want to confirm that before. Task service result int get number of copies. Task service result bool is checked out. I went very granular with these methods, I'll say. For better or worse, I guess that's okay. It's a very semantic approach, I guess. Alright, so get current hold patron. This is service result of string. Get current hold patron. String get current hold placed. String get current patron. I wonder why that returns a string. That doesn't seem right, but it is what it is. Just going through the legacy code. And then in these other cases, I don't like having these void service methods that just do something and then kind of disappear. So at the very least, we can start with these as returning bools, for instance. I mean, depends on really what they're doing. With add checkout, what I might want to do is either return that checkout object, that whole object that gets added, or return like the primary key or something. Let's return the primary key for add. So that's good. And in terms of sort of these truly void methods where nothing is really changing, well, state is changing, but what do we want in return here? Probably like service result of bool will be a good starting place. May not be where we end up, but at the very least I can return like true or false in terms of the data and check that to see if it was expected result. That doesn't give us much information. But if there was an error, we could put the service error on the service result anyway. So I think I'm okay with the bool for the time being. Place hold takes the int asset ID and int library card ID. Then here we have the service result bool checkout item for the int ID. Library card ID, I assume that's also an asset ID, so I'm going to leave that here. And then, see now even when you go back through your old legacy code, you start to see how naming is super important, because you're basically another developer at this point, and it's just as if another developer was looking at your code, and it's nice to be able to look at an interface and say, oh, I can see what the behavior is at a glance. But if you have bad names like I do, then you have to make guesses, and when you make guesses about code, a lot of times, speaking from my own experience anyway, if you're guessing about code, you'll probably make mistakes. All right, so here we'll say mark lost, mark found, and I think I might refactor this to just say mark item, and then we'll have like an enum for the state on the item, maybe. All right, so we got to make our checkout DTO. Come up into our models, DTOs. going to have a checkout DTO. And here we'll look at our existing entity model. And we are going to basically use the same model. I'm not going to worry about these data annotations. And in fact, I might eventually move away from the data annotations to use the library, the Fluent validation library. All right, so import missing references. These will be library card DTOs, library asset DTOs. So we'll make that library card DTO. Here we'll bring in the library card class. So we'll come here, library card DTO, enumerable checkout DTO. Could probably just make this a list because that's what it's usually going to be, I think, or it's probably what it's always going to be. But that's okay for now. Checkout DTO. Now we need to make our library asset DTO. Also, I probably don't need to be talking so much. Oops. Okay. Come back here. We still need to create the whole DTO. I think Automapper will just resolve the whole dependency or the whole mapping graph, but I'm not totally certain about that. Like if it's mapping from a hold to a hold DTO, and hold has library asset entity model, and hold DTO has library asset DTO, I assume that it will traverse the graph and also serialize the library asset DTO, all of the members. Okay. Let's come into iCheckout service now. It's looking happier. Need to check something really quickly. Sorry about the delay. Okay, all good. What time is it? 12:26. Keep working for about 40 more minutes probably. Hope everyone is doing well. Whew. See some people have joined the Discord. Thanks for joining. Appreciate you guys. All right, so let's take a look at our hold service interface. That's all good. Let's build the project, see what I missed. Oh, only 16 errors. That's right, because we have all the implementations that need to match the new interfaces. So I'm almost tempted to just rewrite them, considering the fact that they've changed so much. But that would be a little sloppy. So what we're going to do is look at all these changes. We should implement all of these things and then just do the refactor. The first thing that we want to do here is bring in Automapper. Interesting also that I'm bringing in the whole DB context into this service. But what are you going to do? Did it implement all those members? No. So I'm going to do that manually. Mapper is equal to mapper. Private read-only paginator. This one's tricky because we could be basically my services here are saying like, hey, I'm a service for this particular entity. That's not really the way you always want to design it, I would say. Like you definitely have some leaky abstractions there. The service layer should really like aggregate whatever it needs from however the data is persisted, I would say, to serve the business logic of the front end. And so you may require lots of different entities to facilitate checkout of a book or some piece of media. As such, I may need paginators of lots of different types here, or paginators of a DTO, for instance, which isn't an EF core entity. So I need to really rethink how I've implemented the paginator anyway. But we'll get there. I think the paginator should be concerned with... So this is an interesting question. It's like the paginator currently actually itself queries Postgres from the data access layer so that I can construct this query before it gets executed. Really, I want to be able to, depending on how the business logic is needed for the web layer, then, hey Mythman, Redman, good to see you again. Happy coding to you as well. So depending on what information, what data my services need to assemble to serve the web layer, this should really be the concern of the service layer. And the pagination object is a response from the service layer. So it's really used for serving whatever the front end needs and wants, and often that it doesn't have anything to do with the way the data is represented, and yet baked into our paginator I've baked in the EF core entity models. So I think that that's a bit of leaky abstraction and just kind of maybe sloppy design that I could rethink longer term. I've struggled with this before, this sort of choosing these entity models up front in sort of choosing like the appropriate business domain, if you will, and then creating more sophisticated logic in the service layer that maps from the way data is stored to the way the domain is actually handled from a business perspective. So I'm just thinking out loud. All of that is also to say that, well, that's also kind of separate from just the general leaky. I mean, it's related, but it's putting entity framework inside of a paginator, making my paginator tightly coupled to the way data is represented, as opposed to the way that, or sorry, the way that data is persisted versus the way that I would like to represent some aggregated data is a mistake on my part, I think, long term. But we will heal that wound when it starts really hurting, which isn't necessarily always the best idea. Okay, so we want to, let's go ahead and implement the interface with all of these methods that got refactored into new signatures. This monster checkout service is really where the bulk of the value of this application lives. I think Sandy Metz talks about like these classes that are central to your organization, and they end up being like these, I think she calls it the Death Star pattern. Death Star pattern, Sandy Metz. The Death Star anti-pattern. Getting it right by betting on wrong. She calls it the Death Star pattern because I think if you look at a graph of lines of code to churn, you should see like lower churn for larger classes. That makes the code base a lot easier to maintain. But up in the right hand corner, you'll have like these enormous classes that get a lot of churn in little small places, but they're also really fragile, and so it looks like the Death Star on a graph of classes from churn to, that's graph churn to code size. All right, this is the Death Star class for this application to this point, probably. All right, so we're gonna need paged holds, checkouts, and is that it? I think we need paged holds and checkouts. So the paginator anti-pattern that I've created here is not killing us yet, but oh, it will. It will. Sometimes when you're working on classes like this, you can also feel them kind of start to split, like across responsibilities or between responsibilities. All right, so we need an Automapper, mapper, an iPaginator of type hold. I'm gonna call that just HP for short. That's kind of ugly, but paginator of checkout paginator. Hey, Imand. Yes, they are uploaded. Typically, unless I mess up the sound or something like that, in which case I usually don't upload it if the quality is really bad. This one I'll upload. Can't make any guarantees about the quality, but I will do so. And part 1 is out there, I think, on the channel. Thanks for stopping by. Okay, so checkout paginator is set up, our mapper is set up. So now when the new add method is this, I'm going to move the old implementation down to the new and just work on it here. So what we'll do is context.add async. So we need to make all these methods async. Add async new checkout, and so we'll await this one. Yeah, thanks for stopping by. we will add, did I intend to say add the entire checkout here? I believe I did. So, except here I want to actually add a checkout DTO. New checkout. And then we'll say checkout entity var checkout entity is equal to mapper.map. We're going to map checkout from the new checkout DTO. All right. Save changes async, I believe. And then here we can return a new service result with some data. As the int here, I'm just returning the primary key of the new entity. So here we can say checkout entity.id. I'm pretty sure that any framework is going to be tracking that, and so we'll have it here, I believe. Of course, if that's not the case, there'll be some solution that we can come up with here. The error is going to be null. Here we will wrap this in a try, and I need to look at what the save changes async exceptions are so I can stop catching a generic or catching a broad exception here, base exception I should say. Catch, so I'm going to look that up in a minute. Exception E, return, wish it would autocomplete my curly braces. Return new service result. Here the error is this is a message. Data is null. My computer is really being slow at the moment. Error is a new service error. So slow. With a message of e.message and a stack trace of e.stack trace, which apparently is 2 words. Oh, that's right. So we have a value type here, so we'll just return data is 0. Cannot convert source type int to target type t. What you mean about that? What do you mean? Return new service result int. So use the type in the generic. All right, so I want to look at what types of exceptions. Oh, this is rather than Visual Studio, this is JetBrains Rider, which is just another IDE that you can use. Working on a Mac at the moment, and so there is Visual Studio for Mac as well, but I just prefer to use Rider in this case. But it's really similar to Visual Studio. I don't know how similar it is to Visual Studio Code though. All right. So what I want to look at is what save changes async or add async throw. EF core save changes async. DB update exception, DB update concurrency exception. All right, so let's just catch those. Start to feel better about the exceptions that I'm catching. DB update exception, E. Can you catch multiple exceptions in C#? That sounds like such an elementary question. Catching multiple exceptions C#. I'm pretty sure that you can't. Maybe you can. Ooh. Apparently this has also been around for a very long time. 12 years at least. You can say if, except, oh no, never mind. That's in an if block. I thought there was some magic or inside of the catch block. I bet this is part of C# at this point. But maybe it's not. I don't want to do an if block. Oh, you can do catch when in C#6. Can you do multiple whens? That's kind of the question. Oh, I'll just say or. Yeah, oh, I got you. All right. Yeah, it's a nice IDE. Imond, yeah, I enjoy using it. One downside is I think that it's paid only. I don't know if there's a. I think there's a free trial, JetBrains trial, but I like their other IDEs too, like WebStorm and DataGrip for SQL queries and PyCharm for Python. Those would be the three that I use mainly, but they also have an IDE for Java for a long time, IntelliJ, and they've got one for Go, and they've got one for C called CLion. They got one for Ruby called RubyMine, and yeah, they've got a whole lot out there. They also are the developers of Kotlin, I believe. So, pretty interesting company. I'm not associated with them at all. I just like Rider as an IDE. Okay, so what's the syntax? Catch exception when EX is. So we can say catch catch exception X when. Why couldn't they have just made this inside of the... Why couldn't they just made a comma inside of the catch block? EX, what's the syntax? Is it is? Wow, there's an is keyword for this, apparently, where E is, yeah, let's say X. Where X is DB update exception. Not when, but where? Is that what it is, or when? It's when. Nice. Yeah, so you just use Visual Studio now. That's cool. Yeah, Visual Studio is still a great IDE, of course. When EX, so what's it upset about here? Oh, exception EX. Obviously. Catch when. Oh, I see. When EX is. What's the syntax here? This is ugly, man. Oh, when. Is that really what you say? So you have these two parens. X is this or this. So I can say when the exception is a DB update exception or a DB concurrency exception. Really? Why does it not like this? Or EX is DB concurrency. Okay, I want to put these on separate lines. And then, yeah, I could catch the broader exception here as well, but I'm trying really hard to explicitly catch the exceptions that get thrown, so the intentions are very clear. Oh, what time is it? All right. I said that I would stop at 1. I may go a little bit longer, but I would love to finish out this refactor of the checkout service. That would get us a really long way there. Probably have to end up doing one more live stream Man, I forgot that this project was pretty large. Probably larger than it needs to be in a sense, in multiple senses, but still fun to revisit. Fun to try to make this a little bit more, a little bit better overall, I hope. Okay, so let's start at the top here with this get all. So I'll find the original implementation here. Here we're going to do the pagination result thing, and we already did this for the book service. Get all, so this is going to be very similar. So we're going to do a hack job here of saying that we want to get all checkouts. And then page of checkouts is our paginator of checkout. So that's our checkout paginator dot get checkouts page. Sorry, this is per page. And we want to get by checkout since, I guess. So we'll get the oldest checkouts first. Need to make this method async. Need to go update the interface. Signature. And here we want to bring in a pagination result of checkout DTO. And here a page of checkouts. This one needs to be, sorry about that, rename paginated checkouts. Okay, so that get all is up to date. Get checkout history. Here, interesting. I wonder if I do want to return a paginated result for checkout history, or just always return the whole set for the asset. Probably do want the paginated result. It's going to be interesting to try to chain these includes into the way that I'm paginating, since I think these return includable queryable, and really we're looking for DB set, and I've encapsulated the logic for doing things like where expressions and other queryable stuff inside of the paginator. That paginator is starting to smell more and more. I really want the paginator just to work with queryable objects. And then I want to sort of come up for air outside of the paginator, if you will, to execute the query in the service layer. That's the key, I think. That is the key that I am missing. And then all that work that went into figuring out the generic implementation of the paginator using dbset is all for nothing, but it was a good quick learning experience. But yeah, I don't want to query inside of this. No way. I want to query outside of the paginator and just return a, because all of this skip and take operates on queryable objects. So I don't need to execute the query inside of the paginator. Meaning that this doesn't need to be async. Meaning that I don't need to return a DB set, but rather an iQueryable of t iQueryable of t, and I'll need to fix this thing that it's upset about. db set, I can pass the db set, except we're going to call this a queryable. And what's it upset about here? That link to return a type threading.task generic list. So yeah, we just want to return a queryable. And now what's it upset about? Cannot convert iQueryable t to return type. Link iQueryable. For instance, link iQueryable to link iQueryable of a type. Where am I saying that's the case? Maybe the paginator, hold on. Does the paginator need to be generic at all? Needs to be generic so that it knows how to do the order by expressions. Maybe I should still accept a db set and return a queryable, iQueryable. Let's come back out of this one. So I can still take in a db set, but I should return an iQueryable. It's going to be the return iQueryable. Alright, what's it upset about here? Method build page result cannot implement method from interface. iPaginator return type should be a task. Okay, so we're going to come back here. I just want to return an iQueryable t. Same on this guy. This crazy async paginator that does SQL querying is nonsense. That was the worst idea I've had all morning. Complete nonsense. Complete nonsense. Bada bing. Alright, now we're dealing with queryable, and we're not dealing with any framework. It should have been a smell as soon as I saw that. But what are you going to do? I mean, we're still dealing with entity framework in that the paginator is accepting a DB set, but it's not going to actually be doing any SQL querying. It's just going to be constructing the query to be run and getting returned as paginated values. But itself, it doesn't do any querying, which is going to be a lot nicer, a lot nicer. So here we're just, returning an iQueryable of type. Hope you guys are doing well. Thanks again for watching. Not going to go to list async, which actually queries the database. Everything else is happy. This is no longer async. All the async code stays up in the service layer, well, in the service class, I should say, and that makes sense. There's nothing that needs to be asynchronous about constructing a query, but executing a query, yes. So I'm going to come back into book service as well and fix the couple of places where that might need to be changed, namely here. And then we can say result, or wherever page of books is used, here I can say await toList async. And, well, actually I need to save our book result. Is await page of books.toList async. I wonder if I can call await directly inside a parameter call. Probably not. Oh, you sure can. Oh, you sure can. I don't know if I love that, but I like it anyway. So let's make sure that our paginator is behaving like we expect everywhere. All right, that can stay on one line. This one's a little bit longer. All right, so we're all good there. Checkout service now is all messed up because of what? iCheckout service add int is not. That's because I need to change the signature to say add checkout DTO. Okay, that's looking pretty good. All right, sweet. So now what are we missing? Here we need to just say build page result, toList async outside of the paginator. And see what else is broken if we just run .NET build. Hey Guy, yeah, glad to spend the morning writing some code. Thank you for spending some time here checking it out. I definitely appreciate it. Hopefully that over time this old project that we have gets better and can be a better resource for anyone trying to learn .NET. So as long as I can iron out all of my mistakes and anti-patterns, it'll get better. All right, so first of all, check out service line 30 smells, and then also all of this catalog controller errors because of the new service implementation. All right, so line 30, mapper, yeah, that was a typo. And the catalog controller is going to be all messed up because of the implementation. So I'm going to stop the bleeding in the controller for the time being until we're able to have the controller implement or use the new implementation of the service correctly. All right. Now let's try to build. think I've been going for about 3 hours at this point. Is that true? Yeah, I think something like that. That's probably a long enough stream. So we're going to git add, git c, update paginator, start service work, and that's not the best commit message, but it'll remind me of where I am. It's also needs to be spelled git. Then if we head over to GitHub and check out what I have so far, just to give you guys a heads up about what's in the pipeline, after I finish this legacy code refactor, I'm going to make a proper video about the updates to this project, and then I will also be merging the changes that we have here from the branch that we're working in now. Live stream updates, this is all going to get merged into master. Have to rewrite the tests. Some of the things we learned that I learned in this live stream are that I don't yet know how to properly mock out async DB context calls for testing using XUnit and mock, but that'll be pretty fun to figure out. The other thing is somewhere I have a to-do list, I think. Implement use of service result, we did that. Make service layer web async, this is in process. Pagination is added, we did clean up that a little bit. Write new test, this needs to be done. So once these two things are done, that's good to hear, Iman. Don't worry about that too much. I think the best way to learn is just to watch and start building stuff your own, and hopefully in the updated video that I make, I will go into more detail explaining specifically why certain things were done and some of the patterns to make that easier to follow for people who are just coming to C# for the first time or to .NET Core for the first time. But thank you very much for watching. Update checklist. Then I'll have to come back and take a look at coveralls or whatever I was using, codecov, to revisit the coverage, which is going to completely change. We have a lot of new classes, structures changed. Maybe I should save this as reference. I wonder if there's a way to export this just for the purposes of the video when it's eventually created. Well, I'll make another one probably. Here we go. I'll just copy and paste it like this. And I will just save that to the desktop. So that's all good. And what else did we learn this time? What else did I learn? Don't put Entity Framework code, don't put database calls inside of a pagination class. Construct the query in the pagination class and execute that query after the pagination class is done doing its construction. That's a good lesson learned. What else was learned? I learned or relearned about calling exception when, and I feel like there was something else big. Well, if I think of it, I'll have to include that in the video as well. Kind of just thinking out loud at this point. But anyway, thank you guys for watching. I'm going to wrap up the stream now.